Have you played Atari today? Does Genesis really do what Nintendo don't? Are you playing with power? Superpower? We'll attempt to address those questions, but first we'll add one of our own. Yinz Dahn to listen. I'm Greg, aka Cookbook Thor, the God of Thunder and Haluki, and I'm joined as always by.
I'm Rob, aka Jibs Warrior, aka not as well versed as Greg on today's subject. I'll be the first one to admit that. So I've brought backup. So today we have a guest, Evan from Main Level Games that we've mentioned on this show before in Butler, Pennsylvania, is joining us to talk about today's subject. So, Evan, how about a little introduction for those who might have stumbled across us on the internet?
Sure thing, guys. Thanks so much, Rob and Greg, first of all, for having me on. This is awesome. I am very much looking forward to this conversation. Like you guys said, my name is Evan Miranda. I am the owner of Main Level Games here in Butler, PA. We are a video game store in our small town, but our store has been growing pretty well over the past year and a half. That's how long we've been in business. So we specialize from everything from the Atari, as mentioned, up to the current gen, but really have probably more of a focus on the vintage stuff. So the late 80s to 90s is really where our bread and butter is. But yeah, we've it's been great to get to know you guys through the store, and we've been able to become friends, and can't wait for this conversation.
Awesome, awesome. So if the audience hasn't put two and two together, we're going to talk about vintage gaming, vintage video gaming. That's going to be the main focus. Obviously we'll delve into probably some of the modern stuff as we, get into our roundtable kind of conversation. So, with all the access now that we have to vintage gaming within walking distance, thanks to Main Level Games, we're going to talk about video gaming, our love, and maybe our dislikes will come out about it too. But in order to do this, like I said, I'm not as versed. I'm definitely a gamer, but I'm more of what I would classify as a mainstream gamer. So, the games that move the needles were the ones that I focused on, and then I delved back in. But I know, Greg, for knowing you, and obviously Evan for knowing what you have in the store, there are rabbit holes and niches inside gaming that I am completely out of my league in. So I'm gonna be the interviewer for this episode. So I'm gonna throw questions. I'll add my 2 cents here and there, where it fits, but I will, give you guys a peek behind the break the fourth wall. We pre-submitted these questions. Evan's not being blindsided by this. Greg isn't being blindsided by this. So, if it sounds like, man, these guys have an extensive answer to this question. We thought about it, but the conversation is going to go off track. I think conversationally, that's just natural to happen. So, if you guys are ready, I'm going to start hitting you. So, Greg, hopefully you dusted off your vintage video game portion of the brain, so we can really get into this. We ready to go?
I am braced for impact.
All right, so I'm going to start with Greg for the first answer on this one, and then Evan, I'll throw it over to you. But so, Greg, what is your earliest video gaming memory? This could be a game you had, maybe a purchase, or even a memory just sitting in front of a TV with your controller in your hand. But what is your earliest memory of sitting down to game?
Well, we're going to go back to about 1983. I
Okay.
don't know if my sister was even born yet. She may have been a very small baby, and she would have been in 1983. But I remember my older cousins, uh, my aunt lived not far away, and they had an Atari 2600, as many folks did back then. And I would see it under the TV whenever we visited, and I would be fascinated by this thing, and I would want to play it. And usually, I would see it as we were on our way out the door, and was not allowed to play it because when we already had our shoes on and everything. But one day, I finally did get to play it, and I was, uh, yeah, still extremely young. Yeah, no more than 3 or 4 years old, and they let me play Miss Pac-Man, I believe it was, and I was just transfixed on the screen and the sounds. And I don't know if I even really moved the joystick that much. I was just mesmerized. But I have that memory of being mesmerized and holding this big square joystick in my hand, and I really don't know if I did much with it, but it was the beginning of a lifelong love of video games, even if I was a few years away from properly enjoying them at that point. And a few years later, when they kind of lost interest in it, they passed the whole system my way, and one thing led to another. But that was where it all started.
That's
It had to have been
the
the year of
beginning
the
of a
crash.
long road.
Hmm.
Awesome, awesome. So Evan, same question. What's the earliest thing you can remember about video gaming?
Wow, my earliest or first video game memory. That is such a great question. I have actually been able to implement this answer into the store because my earliest memory is actually with my cousins Anthony and Angelo. I mean, this would probably have been 1997, and it was in their basement up in New York. They had a demo disc for the PlayStation 1. It was a PlayStation Underground demo disc, and on that demo disc, there was Croc, Legend of the Gobbos, Parappa the Rappa. I'm pretty sure there was an NBA Live demo on there. I believe Tomb Raider was on there as well. So that was my earliest memory. And the first like full game that I ever played, also at their house, was Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. So I just had an awesome first gaming experience, first gaming memory with my cousins, who I mean at the time were like best friends to me, and I'm
Yep.
still super close with them. So to be able to share that was awesome. And what's really cool is at the store, I have the exact copy of that PlayStation Underground disc and that the exact copy of Crash Bandicoot 2 that my cousins sent me when they heard I was opening up the store. So I actually have the physical copies of the first games that I ever played that I'm actually planning on hanging up on the wall and displaying them, which I'm excited about.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, and to still have it as well makes it even that much more cool. And to put that story in the shop is going to be fantastic. Um, so, I thought about this one a little bit myself. I have bits and pieces of memory before the one I'm about to share, of whether it be arcade gaming cabinets at the front of a store or playing Atari. But the first one that I really remember is the original NES. Is talking to my parents. It was really, I have two sisters. It was my middle sister, and me and my mom were at Kmart in Butler, not where it ended, so not in the Pullman Plaza, in the Point Plaza in the corner. So Greg, I think you know where I'm talking about. The
Yep.
um, we were looking at the display, and me and my sister, which we never agreed on anything ever, we both knew that we wanted the Nintendo. We wanted it. Like I wasn't even. It was one of those situations where it was like, I can't believe that me and this person are agreeing on this type of thing. But we both wanted it, and we pitched the idea to my mom, and there was like four stage gates that we had to clear for us to get this Nintendo. It was like rooms clean, homework done. And I recall having to clean my room, but I had a bed that like it had drawers underneath it, but they only went so far, so it was pushed up against the wall. So the consistency of me cleaning my room like wore off like right away. And it was basically just take whatever was out and throw it behind the bed. That was like they won't know the difference. And we cleared these gates, and I remember bringing it home and playing it and going, all the crap is under my bed. Like I still have to clean my room at some of these points, but the Nintendo's here. So we did bring it home, and it wasn't but like a couple weeks later, my sister had a friend. The only thing I remember about this girl was her name was Jenny. Um, and when we played, Super Mario Brothers, she speed ran it. We just got this thing, and she was speed running, and we were like just blown away. And my parents, because we had one TV, so we all sat there and watched this girl like ace this game that we had just started playing. And she earned the nickname, and we still use it to this day, even though I don't know anything about this girl. I don't even know if my sister knows, where she is or what happened to her. We call her Steam Jenny because she ran like a steam engine, like through the game. So we call that stuck forever. But um, it was the earliest one that I can remember with thorough context. So that's got to be the one that sticks out most. And it's one of those things where that's not a hard game to get, but now I speed run it. My son speed runs it. So Steam Jenny was just something that stuck out. So interesting. Okay, so question number two. Evan, we'll start with you this time. What is
Yeah.
your favorite game of all time? But wait, we're going to break this down into categories. Okay. So we're going to start with favorite console.
Favorite console, man. And you know what the great thing is, guys? I talk about this, 40 hours a week.
Uh-huh.
I could talk about this stuff 80 hours a week. That's why this is the stuff that gets me so excited. Okay, so when I think of my favorite console, there's a couple things that I tend to consider, and my favorite console has actually changed over the years. And I'll answer it in just a moment, but I try to think of okay, what's nostalgic for myself, but really what helped change gaming in an awesome way. So for the longest time, I've always been a PlayStation kid, and the PS1 was very nostalgic. And I know that I'm kind of sticking with PlayStation by saying this, but my all-time favorite console, I really believe, is the PlayStation 2. It's the library of games on this thing was bar none at the time. It was also something that so many people had, like so many people just had a PS2 that there seems to be consoles from generation to generation where for whatever reason everyone has it. So for that generation, most people had the PS2. The next one, most people had the Wii. Right now, most people have the Switch. You might have other consoles mixed in between, but for a household console, the PS2 for that from that gen seemed to be the one that everyone had. So that was really easy to play with buddies. I had just great memories going over to friends' houses. Like that's where a lot of that favorite console is attached to is the late nights, the sleepovers, the gaming marathon sessions where we'd play, far past our bedtime with, myself with friends over at their houses or them at mine. So the PS2 for its library, for the nostalgia factor, and just the fact that I could play with my friends in, an every weekend ordeal just makes that my all-time favorite console. And there are some games on that console that still to this day I will play and have maybe not the exact amount of enjoyment just because, and I'm sure we'll dive into this at some point too. I find it hard to fully get that feeling that I had when I was younger with certain games. The older I get, it's not like it's less; it's just different. But there are some games on the PS2 that I can play today that I still get a sense of enjoyment and excitement that is childlike. So all those things adding up, the PS2 just happens to be it for me. That is my favorite console for sure.
So that's mine. Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because I completely 100% agree with you. And it breaks down to me almost exactly the same as what you said. I can think of three or four different friends' houses where we would just go and play the same games at each other's houses
Oh yeah,
on PS2. It was yeah, Need for Speed. We would play that game. Um, we would play PGA and just to see who could drive the ball farthest. Just stuff like that. Just for hours and hours with no real like we weren't trying to beat the game. We weren't trying to beat each other. We were just literally playing the
right.
systems. And if we weren't out and about literally doing something, going to a game or a concert or something like that, and we were just sitting around, we were playing on the PlayStation too. So, there were, it was a, it was a slow transition to the three. It happened, but by that
Sure.
time, it was like there were other things competing, and gaming was starting to, consume less and less at the time. So yeah, it's almost like a window into that point in my life with the PS2 in the basement. I could still feel the click of the switch on the back of
Oh
it.
yeah,
So
dude. Yeah.
it's when it clicked on, I mean, the PS3 was similar, but the PS2 it just felt different. The memory card stuck in there underneath everything, and yeah, it's my favorite as well. So So, Greg, are we going three for three? I don't think. I don't remember I
If
think
I was
you're
a
going to
betting
go a
man, I'd
different
say
way.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, Greg, favorite console?
You'd be correct. I'm a little bit older than that, I suppose. I'm going to go with the old Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES,
Nice.
which just slightly edges out the Sega Genesis because probably because I got it first and played it more. But yeah, those were my go-to consoles for the majority of my game playing youth, and I have many fond memories of renting games from Giant Eagle, the old Eagle Video, on the weekends for many years, primarily for the NES, and getting the Game Genie. I think a couple of years after I got the NES itself, I got the Game Genie, and that was a game changer because it really made some of those rather difficult games much more playable. It really leveled the field, and I still go back to them from time to time. So I guess they did something right.
Greg,
Uh,
real quick, correct me
yeah,
if I'm
yeah.
wrong, but the NES, Greg, is still what you that's typically what you collect for consistently to this day, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
nice.
yeah. It's my go-to. It's the one that I've got the warmest, fuzziest feelings for. So yeah, I'm gonna need more storage space for the games pretty soon. I can pretty much confirm that.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm there with you on the runner up, Greg, for sure. The Sega Genesis was the same thing for me. In my elementary years, I can remember Mortal Kombat 1, playing that at sleepovers for hours and hours. It was just that's the one where I would say if I had a focus for what I'm looking for on Saturdays when I stop in at the shop of it, it's probably I'm looking at the Sega Genesis stuff. I have another member of my household who looks at everything,
Yeah.
but I have I've created the Mega Sega in the basement, so it's a close runner up. I think it's just the nostalgia that hits me in the feels for the
That's awesome.
PS2. So
And guys, real quick, now that you bring up the Genesis, that was just before my time. So I was born early '92, so I really didn't start playing like I mentioned until the mid to again like '96, '97. But for the Genesis, was that kind of marketed and played more by like the teen to 20s crowd when it was released?
that yes, I mean I think that, and Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong if I'm off base, but I think that they really pushed Sonic being edgier than Mario and Mortal Kombat being available, the sports games being more, realistic coming out
Yeah,
into Genesis than the Nintendo. Um, and I think Nintendo kind of had to step up their game a bit. And when the Super Nintendo came out, they tried to do that. But I remember, I remember in the early '90s. Genesis was like that was the cool thing. It was sleek. It was black. It was like that was the culture of the time. And Nintendo was kind of maybe a little bit more. Um, I don't know, for lack of a better term, it was a little bit more juvenile when you were 12 or 13 years old. So,
mm,
it was a little bit more edgy. I don't know, Greg, if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. Yeah, Nintendo had, I mean, Nintendo was so successful in the '80s with Mario, with the cartoons and everything from, and it seemed like you couldn't go down any aisle of any store without seeing something with Mario on it at some point. And so it had that more, a little more family feel to it. And Sega definitely capitalized on being hipper and edgier. And I mean, Sonic was still perfectly fine for kids, of course, but it
Right.
just
mhm.
seemed like the cool one. Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah.
I remember
That's
those
right.
ads like they
Yep.
were yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. And and like you said, yeah, with Sonic, like I think it was just the design that gave it that more modern look. He had the high tops, he had the spiky hair. We're talking about a hedgehog,
Right.
so when you compared him to the Italian plumber, it
Right.
was marketed a different way. But yeah, it was just it was just the next evolution. But you can kind of see who won out in the long run between those two companies. But
Oh my, yeah.
so,
Mm-hmm.
all right, same vein, same question, Greg. I'm going to go with you, but now we're just talking about favorite game. So, favorite game of all time.
That is a question that can
Keeps
have a
you up at
different
night.
answer depending on what day or what time of day or what mood I'm in when you ask me. But right now, you know what? I'm going to pivot a little bit back to the Sega Genesis era, kind of, and go with Street Fighter Two.
Mm, mm.
And yeah, that was Street Fighter Two Champion Edition was one of the must-have titles on the Genesis, and I played the heck out of that, and I played the heck out of it in the arcades as well, which was a great communal experience that it has largely left us, but there are still places that you can find it, primarily on the convention circuit with things like gaming expos. But yeah, Street Fighter Two, I think, would probably be mine. And yeah, as a kid, I was I mained E Honda for the most part, and as an adult, I main Zangief for the most part, which is I don't know what made me change, but those are my go-to guys, I guess.
Okay. All right, Evan, do you have a so favorite game? You can't use the demo disc. You got to pick a game.
Right, right. Nice. So I'm definitely feeling kind of the same thought process as Greg here. Not necessarily Street Fighter, but any given day or week or year, I can look back, or I can look back and just think about this, and it might change. I've always been a fan of platformers. Always been a fan of platformers. And Naughty Dog as a developer I just believe, has consistently made quality games. So I know it's kind of hard, it kind of goes back to what I said as an early gaming memory, though it's not Crash Bandicoot 2, but Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped is my all-time favorite game. Um, like I said, that might seem like a simple answer, but the nostalgia and that when that game came out and the summer that I started playing it, and I'm the type of gamer and have been since the 90s where, and I'm not even really sure what you would call this. I know some gamers do this, some don't. I will just play one game at a time. So I won't, I'm just not able to jump back and forth, guys. I don't know what it is. I've always been that way. Like, I will sit down and start a game, and even if I begin to hate it, I will keep going through until I finish it, and then I'll pick up the next one. And Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, I never hated it, but I played it, and then I played it again, and then I played it a third time. And if there's a game I want to just jump on and play from the 90s, it'll be that game. So Crash 3 Warped is just, it is and consistently is my favorite all time. Mix that between nostalgia, my cousins that I played two, then I played three with, and the fact that it was a game I never really hated, but was just able to repeat. Summer after summer, I would play that game. So, Crash 3 Warped is it for me.
Okay.
Awesome.
So there's a final part, I guess. Well, there's a next part of this question. So this choosing between these two parts really killed me a little bit. So my favorite game of all time is NHL 94. Okay. And the reason
Nice.
that I say it killed me was because the next question I'm going to ask you guys, so get prepped, is favorite game series. So NHL it's neck and neck with my favorite series, but it's not my all-time favorite series. So I'm throwing this in as my favorite game. So this is the game that, I was 13. So it transitioned me from kid games to adult games. It was fun to play. You could fight, you could knock people out. I mean, Greg, you and I played NHL 94 recently at Hockey Card Day just to see
Mm-hmm.
how many people we could take out. It
Yep.
was one of those things like you didn't have that with Blades of Steel, for Nintendo. So when this came out, the gameplay changed. It wasn't side scrolling anymore. It really started, to develop the games that came before it with 93 and All Star before that. But 94 was like, it brought everything together. And from there, that series grew. and I'm a collector of that series. But 94 started it. They also did a updated version, maybe like 2016, for a downloadable for PlayStation. Well, I think it's for all next gen consoles of 94 with updated players. And I play that to this day because it's downloaded on every machine that I have. So I could just real quick play a quick game with Ovechkin and Crosby in the same format, same graphics. So that's definitely my favorite game of all time if I'm choosing just a single. So, shifting gears into why that was so hard is the next question is your favorite game series. And for me, um, it's God of War. God of War, every single game, the theatrics, the graphics, up through the fact that they shifted the series from Greek mythology to Norse mythology. Every edition came with something cool. You could buy the statues or Mjolnir in the last one that was released, but the game itself, even I just think about. I mean, I have a Kratos tattoo on my arm, so it is my favorite game series. I can remember when me and my wife moved in together. We lived in a small trailer in Connequenessing, and we would sit on the couch. She would just watch me play that game because she was like, it's like watching a movie. Like it was like every evening we got home from work, she's like, "You gonna play more God of War?" I said, "Yeah, that's awesome." She's like, "It's like watching a movie," and I said, "Yeah, it's fantastic." And they re-released all of them, I think, in one through three in a collected edition. When it into the remastered, and I've delved into that a little bit more now that I've got a functioning PS3 thanks to main level games, and I'm able to play that a bit more. So that's my favorite game series. So, Evan, do you have a favorite series of games?
Sure do. Real quick though, Rob. What's cool? It's so tough to argue with God of War. 2 points to that. Number one, I feel like for a while there, I mean, the God of War franchise was defining PlayStation. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was what Sony was using in a lot of its marketing. Uh, you know, that's gameplay that Sony would use to show off its system. So really tough to argue with. And I'll tell you what, God of War at the store sells so well. You had mentioned the different that collection. So I think there's God of War collection, there's Saga, there's Origins collection. Those sell so well at main level games. Like that series is just that franchise is so loved and holds up like crazy. So can definitely appreciate that. Boy, is God of War awesome. See now you're having me think. So
No hedging. You can't hedge.
right. So okay, to be fully honest, my favorite franchise is Kingdom Hearts.
Mm.
And that was so I remember playing the first one. I'll get vulnerable here. So it started. I actually kind of grew to know the franchise a few years after it was released, after the first game was released. So my grandpa had passed away. This would have been I want to say 2004, 2005. And so my friends had always talked about um, playing this game, Kingdom Hearts. And so the same summer that my grandpa had unfortunately passed away, our house flooded. So our the top
Oh.
floor of in my parents' home, the toilet, something happened, and we were actually away on
Mhm.
vacation at the time, and thousands of gallons of water poured through our home. So
Oh my.
I we had to go into a hotel, and my grandma was at her house alone. So I was like, oh, you know what, let me go sleep over my grandma's house, keep her company. My grandpa just passed. And so that same summer my parents graciously purchased it would have been the greatest hits copy at the time of Kingdom Hearts. And so I played it for a summer at my grandma at that time, grandma's house. And it was like a vulnerable time for myself, for her, for my family. And every single night, I'd go up for bed, and it was the summer, so I could stay up a little bit later. I would play Kingdom Hearts and fell in love with the series. We were a big and still are a big Disney family. Obviously grew up with the movies and was able to go to Disney World a few times as a kid. So to be able to see Disney characters you know, crossed with the Final Fantasy franchise, which was a beloved PlayStation franchise, or I'm sorry, not specifically PlayStation, but Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, like it was just this perfect time for me of a crossover uh, for a new franchise to be created, and that was Kingdom Hearts. And 2 came out. I never played the portable games until years later when they got ported onto the PS2, and then eventually PS3, and then they made. Speaking of collections, I think they made about 30 Kingdom Hearts collections because they just keep releasing them. But yes, Kingdom Hearts as a franchise is my number one for the time that I started playing it, the vulnerability for us as a family, what we were kind of going through, and what that game kind of helped to get me through that summer. But then, I mean, the characters in it, there were so many things going for it, and still to this day, I just can look back and think about where I was when I played it, and where I've played it for years, and man, it just really means a lot to me, and always will. Like it has almost an emotional level for me as a gamer. So definitely the
Mm.
Kingdom Hearts franchise.
It's definitely a good one for sure. I've delved into that series a few times because I'm with you. My family has a love for Disney, as people who have listened to this show know, and the ability to play it. I'll buy really any game that has kind of the Disney tie-in. We have some really odd ones that don't really seem like they tie into anything. And then we have some stuff that is just classic. But that one was one that was like, okay, they've modernized it. And one that's on my list from a Disney standpoint to play is that epic Mickey that came out a couple years ago.
Oh,
I just
sure.
haven't done anything with that yet, but it looks intriguing. So, all right. So, Greg, favorite game series?
Favorite series? I'm gonna go with back to the NES. I'm gonna go with Mega Man.
Mm,
Um,
Yes.
yeah, that's yeah, one very near and dear to my heart. I played the heck out of Mega Man 2 when I was a kid, and then picked up each successive one as they came out. And I never did actually play the original Mega Man uh, on my NES proper when I was young, but when Mega Man Anniversary Collection came out on the GameCube, it's been that was probably 20 years ago now. That made it super easy to have every single game, and so I was happy to finally get to play through it there. And it's even continued in the retro style with Mega Man 9 and 10 that came out uh, probably 15 years back now. And there was a Mega Man 11 a few years ago, but it was in more of the 2.5D style as opposed to the 8-bit style. And I confess I haven't played that one, but I did play 9 and 10. So it's yeah, definitely a lot of enjoyment that I got out of that over the years.
that's a relatively large series too, because of all the extra the downloadable content games you can still download today, emulators. People use it all the time because I think I have a little 8-bit like magnet of Mega Man that's stuck on the side of my fridge because I just it's just an iconic character. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's an it doesn't get a lot of it doesn't get a lot of cred, in mainstream wise. Like it's I think of Mega Man right there with Mario, Sonic.
Hmm.
I just think of that, and
Oh,
I might
absolutely.
I might be in the we might be rarities when it comes to that. If you asked a younger gamer now who Mega Man was, you might get a lot of puzzled looks, to be honest. So
You're
Well,
you're 100% right, dude.
yeah.
So most people that purchase Mega Man at the store are Greg, folks just like you grew up with it and just have a heart for it. It's unfortunate that, yeah, it seems like the younger crowd just hasn't attached to the Mega Man franchise as much as those that grew up with it. I want to ask real quick, Greg, within your video game collection, does Mega Man hold the number one spot as the most number of games within your collection? Like Mega Man has the most games for a singular franchise within what you have.
that is a very good question, and I would have to take inventory and count. um, and I have everything, nicely cataloged in a Google Doc, but I'd have to actually go through and count on.
It's got to be up there.
It's up there. I can't say if it's number one, but it's got to be up there. Yeah,
Nice.
Yeah.
it's because for me, Mega Man is equal to Sonic and Mario, and that part of that maybe because of him appearing in Captain and the Game Master on Saturday mornings in 1989, which that variation of the character didn't quite have the longevity, but really he was legit from the start. He was a major player and remains so in my heart.
Well, that's a fantastic segue. So, Greg, I'm going to go to you. Do you have a favorite video game spin-off, TV show, comic, etc.? I mean, you were just mentioning a couple from the Mega
Mm-hmm.
Man side, but what would your favorite be?
Yeah, around that same time period, I'm going to go with the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, starring Captain
Yes.
Lomino of World Wrestling Federation fame. He After he retired from managing many many champions, he shaved his beard, grew out his mustache, and uh, put on the overalls and became really the first physical incarnation of Mario that most of us ever saw. And in the hearts of guys about my age, he still defines the character. And I mean, the cartoon itself was your mileage may vary,
Mm,
pretty silly cookie cutter stuff, but the live action segments with Lou Albano as Mario and Danny Wells as Luigi, and a different guest celebrity every week were really what the show was all about. I mean, you had everyone from other wrestlers like Roddy Piper and Sergeant Slaughter, which I assume
Wow.
Lou had on speed dial, and you had Ernie Hudson from around the time Ghostbusters 2 came
yeah,
out.
yeah.
You had Cassandra Peterson as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. You had various athletes and musicians, and like the list really goes on. I can't even name them all, but it was great fun, and they all did the Mario at the end, and yeah, that's something that is really watching that after school every day was a treasured memory for my generation.
Excellent. So mine, you know, I usually, the NHL league doesn't count. That wasn't a spin-off of the game. It was the other way around, which is really kind of how I consumed some of the games that I played. Like, it was I played TMNT the game. I played Spawn, so it was other media influencing a video game. But so I'm going to go very, very new. Okay. So this is something that I enjoy with my son is the new Sonic film franchise is
Mm.
fantastic. I just think that the elements, the universe building, Knuckles show, I think that yeah, I could see what they're doing, and to be honest, it has sparked an incredible amount of interest back in the Sonic franchise by having these successful movies. Um, the last one with Shadow was bringing in Keanu Reeves to play the voice, and Sonic's voice being I don't it's Jean-Ralphio Saperstein from Parks and Rec. I don't know the actor's name, but that's who it is,
Yeah.
and I'd get the biggest kick out of that. But you know even the new Mario movie was great, and I think that those two franchises recently have probably sent a lot of production studios knocking on game developers' doors. The Last of Us show, we were just talking about it. I know it's been started and stopped a few times, but a God of War movie has to be in the future,
My goodness, yes.
because it would be one of those epic, epic summer blockbuster type of movies. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. As far as early, back then, I think the John Leguizamo uh, as Luigi movie that was that was something. I think it was the Koopas that really freaked everybody out, right? With the turtle people that they kind of made live action that
Mhm.
So, when you're going video game movie, I think Sonic still trumps those. But yeah, that one was more
That's fair.
recent for me. But all right, Evan, how about you? Anything that cross genre for you?
Well, I'll tell you what, dude. I couldn't agree more. The Sonic movie franchise that has been released here in the last few years has been great. Like they've really done a good job. What I really liked, I don't know if you guys remember this, before the first Sonic movie came out, I can't even remember what year it was, but in the last, I, because three just got released, but when the first one came out, they had an initial uh, kind of visual for what Sonic was going to
Uh,
look like. The
yeah,
fans hated it,
yeah,
and they changed it.
yeah.
And whenever they changed it, in my head, I was like, "Oh, okay, so they're trying to make this movie good, and it's
No.
been a great franchise." So I would have to kind of piggyback off you, there, Rob, and say like what they've been able to do with the Sonic movies has been awesome. Couple that same deal with the Mario movie that came out. I know two's coming out here, but I have so much hope for a lot of these movies and TV shows that are coming out because it seems like they're trying to listen to fans and they're making just good movies. I think all these production companies know that they're gonna make $1 billion literally,
Hmm.
um, and they could easily think that and say, okay, well let's make like whatever movie we want to make and forget the fans. But I really think that a lot of these movies are doing a great job, and people are just loving it. So I'd have to agree. Kind of the newer movie franchises I've really loved. The other thing that comes to mind though, not necessarily a spinoff, but uh, when I think of other kind of video game related media that isn't actually a game, there's a documentary that came out, and I want to say 2006 or 2007. It's called The King of Kong. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of
Ooh.
it.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
yes, I can tell you about that.
there you go, Greg. Yes. So it's called The King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters. It got a physical release, but the last thing I remember I remember watching it on YouTube in kind of the early days of YouTube. It got on YouTube somehow really quickly. I'm sure not legally, but and then I believe it's streamable right now. Regardless, it follows the Donkey Kong world record holders kind of year over year, and really highlights the main players at that time that were going for the Donkey Kong world record. Billy Mitchell was one of them. Steve Wiebe was another. The two guys they really focused on and kind of showcased the rivalry between these two players, trying to cling on to the world record of Donkey Kong on a specific arcade machine, in specific locations. And so that documentary I've probably watched a dozen times at this point, and it is they do great. It's certainly part of it is edited well to make cool characters out of these real life video gamers. But just a really great watch if you're into Donkey Kong and into more of a history of the old arcade days, uh, and guys not necessarily trying to like hold on to their glory days, but hold on to these records that they are so proud of and spent thousands of hours trying to achieve. This documentary really showcases that and shows, like I said, the rivalry and certain outcomes, and show how long, how far, Rob, you mentioned speedrunners earlier, but
Hmm.
like to show how far people can take video games. And this documentary really does that. So again, it's called The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. I want to say it was '06, '07, '08, somewhere in those years. But yeah, definitely a video game spinoff in the form of a documentary that is, oh my goodness, just a must watch if you're a gamer.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's an excellent choice, Evan. Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet Billy Mitchell and Walter Day at a show about
Really?
10 years ago. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, so I have
dude.
pictures with them somewhere.
Oh, that's awesome. That documentary really opened up my eyes to two record holders and two guys that in women that have mastered games, brought games far beyond what the developers ever could. And then the I don't even know how to put this, like the attachment that some of these players had to the records, because it was just the coolest and is the coolest thing that they could have done, because like what video games were from the arcade days, and like if you had the top score on a specific machine and your initials were up there, like you wanted to keep that because that's awesome. and to learn about the twin galaxies and the record holders and some of the drama behind that too was interesting. But yeah, great docs. Greg, I'm super pumped to hear that you met those guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to dig out that picture for you sometime.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and I don't know. I might be the only one on the podcast right now who's seen the Minecraft movie, but it's I loved it. I mean, if you get a chance to see it,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it was
well,
just
dude, made all the money.
all
I
the
mean,
money.
my goodness,
Yeah.
my goodness.
I mean, when I first heard about it, my son plays Minecraft, and I played Minecraft with him a little bit, but I didn't understand the fad. And then when I saw what they were doing in the movie, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And it kind of doesn't, but it kind of leans into the fact that it doesn't, and that's most of the fun. So I think that you're going to see a
Nice.
lot more of that. And I think I just saw that Jack Black shaved his hair and his beard um, to distance himself from Steve for a little while because I think it has completely changed his already chaotic life in the celebrity spotlight. So
And Rob, I believe I don't know. Did they sign to do like at least two or three movies within the Minecraft universe there?
I think it's two more
Okay,
are greenlit for production, pre-production, but
nice.
in this day and age, whether that sees fruition, I mean, it probably will.
Sure.
It's a big money maker, but yeah, the success is obviously you know going to drive that vehicle forward. So okay, um, so the next question is, what is your favorite aspect of the retro gaming scene today? So I'm going to kind of split these out. So, uh, Evan, I'm going to give this one to you because you probably see a lot more of the retro gaming scene than maybe me and Greg. And
Sure.
Greg, we'll just take a seat and listen to, what Evan's thoughts are on the folks that kind of walk into the store.
Nice. So yes, the and again, the question was like favorite aspects of the retro scene just in general, right?
Right.
Awesome. This is a great question because it gets answered every day, and I'm not asking it, but I get to see the answer to this question literally every single day. So here's what I mean by that. Video games hit a certain age range, especially retro. So it's people that were, for the most part, born from 1970 until the early 90s. That age group is able to experience retro. And I know nowadays people say the PS3 and the Wii and the 360 is becoming retro because it's hit 20 years. But when I think of retro, I'm really thinking of 80s and 90s,
Hmm.
really early 2000s. And so, because of that time period, that happens to be a lot of the customers at main level games. So I get to have these conversations. Video games were very different from a lot of other media or things that we could play or experience in childhood. Watching a movie is awesome. Listening to music is awesome. Hanging out with friends is awesome. Video games, in some capacity, ties all those things together.
Hmm.
It's almost a movie that you can control. It's music that you listen to while you're engaged in something. It's something that you can play with friends. Like video games does that. So for almost everyone that walks into the store, these nostalgic and so much of what we talked about already on the podcast now, these nostalgic feelings that we get when we can pick up a game that we played 10, 20, 30 years ago, and that rush that we get because we know where we were, who we were with, how we felt when we first played that game, it's really, really powerful. So then to be able to purchase that game again and either play it or display it is, in my opinion, just the best thing about the retro gaming scene. Like, obviously the games are still awesome, right? The games are still great. They last. That's why 30, 40 years later we're still talking about some of these games because they're just really incredible works of art. To me, the best part of the retro scene is the players and the collectors being able to just capture briefly, whether it's for an hour or a day or even a few seconds, capture briefly that feeling they had from childhood of where they were, who they were with, how they felt, what they were going through, and how this game meant so much to them at the time. And for so many of us, right, we will be playing these games when we're in our early childhood or teen years and not understand the impact it might be having on us until years later when we're old and our backs are hurting like they are now, and we can look back with great perspective and say, wow, that game really meant something. I mentioned earlier, the summer my grandpa passed away, our house was flooded. Kingdom Hearts was just this game that like helped get me through that. And man, so like that's what's cool about the retro scene is being able to feel your youth again and hold the thing that helped. Certainly video games aren't the answer to life. I'm not trying to portray that. I think there's a lot more things that can be more meaningful, but video games were this could have been and probably were this brief escape for most of us that the retro scene is keeping alive. And that's what I love about it. As we head closer and closer to digital gaming and to an era where we're not even going to own anything, it's at some point all we're going to do is stream new games. We're not going to actually have a physical copy. There's going to be a large group of kids that will never grow up inserting a cartridge into the top of a system or having a disc tray, come out of the system and popping a disc in. All they're really going to know is pushing some buttons to have a game stream. So we had the opportunity and we captured it to grow up in a time and then, take advantage of awesome games that were coming out with really cool developers that were pushing the envelope, being creative. And the retro scene, greatest part of it is just keeping that timeline alive and that time period alive, because it really means a lot to us. And I love seeing it live on. For some people, like the collection side of it, it's more important now than it almost was back then, because completing a collection is a really big accomplishment, whether you're going for the full set of a system or the full, every game in a franchise. So that's what I love, is just being able to recapture and almost relive for a moment that feeling and experience that we had as children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a good segue to the question I'm going to pose to Greg, because I think that accessibility to what we would consider retro games, games, physical copies, physical media games, it's been like a roller coaster. Like you could always find games, and then it was okay, you could only find games for certain things, and then it was like, now you go into big box stores and the games are like, you have this tiny little case. You go to franchise stores like GameStop, and it's turning into a collectible store. The access to games in general has had its ebbs and flows. But Greg, for you, how has the accessibility of retro games changed over time for you, especially with someone who, I know your son enjoys video gaming as well, but literally being able to go find games 5 years ago where we live was not an easy thing to do. It was digging through boxes and flea markets and things like that. So, how for you has it changed over time?
Yeah, well, it went through hills and valleys, I suppose you could say. I mean, um, after any given console kind of runs its course, you'll have people who are uh, starting to unload whatever they had for that system. And so it's been a long time since anyone came up to me with a box of NES games and said, "Hey, I'm just going to get rid of these. You want them?"
Yeah.
But that did happen to me a few times, and I was immensely delighted, and I'm still thankful to this day. But that may happen with uh, Wii games or perhaps Xbox 360 games around now. But I mean, you'll get these. Yeah, it's a sort of a life cycle and even an afterlife cycle where yeah, they come and go, and then they make their way into the new shops like Main Level that have popped up and have made it so much easier to find these things, and that's a big part of why I'm a regular at the store. You know, it's so much easier to find treasures like that now, and it's really amazing a lot of the things that I have come across there.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason I pose this question, kind of to Greg and I and Evan, not to you, is really because you have influenced our local area and even farther. I've been in the store when you've been talking to folks who have drove some significant distances to get there.
Mm.
So the ability for folks to have access to retro games and games in general has been massive. And the reason, like I said, why I posed the question to us rather than to you is because it's almost like a big thank you, because I have a child he's not a child, he's 13 now. He basically demands to go to the store on Saturdays and he looks at games which, without the accessibility to retro games, he wouldn't know anything but Steam and Xbox Live and PlayStation
Mm.
Network. He wouldn't know anything outside of Roblox. So, the fact that if I walked into his room right now and had to move a DS, a 3DS, and a Game Boy Advance just to turn the TV on, because they're sitting there, that would never have happened. And I think, to your point earlier, there is a younger generation who are going to struggle. Okay. I'm not going to say that they're not going to be able to. And the reason I'm going to say they're not going to be able to is because there's always going to be those ebbs and flows. Everything is cyclical. Like, we see it in our toy our toy lives, right, Greg? The stuff that was old is new again. So
Oh yeah.
the kids, I've been in the store when you have a lot of younger shoppers come in to look at the things and even buy the things that they weren't alive when they hit retail shelves. So,
Right.
you know, without the stores like yours, it's gone. And, that's important. And the accessibility that we have to those games is important because physical media, if you would ask, the corporate giants, it's not worth the time,
Mm.
to talk about physical media. Um, Even some of the smaller chain stores, around our area that their name is a synonym for trades instead of starts with an E instead. Their stores have transitioned. I can recall going in there and it being very heavy music, CDs,
Yeah.
movies, and video game and vinyl and cassette sections being like tiny little corners. And now it's a majority of the store, and your CDs and your movies are dwindling. And again, I saw an article the other day where the compact disc for music is making a comeback. And I'm like, this is crazy. It didn't even really die off and it's making a comeback. Cassettes, VHS, Greg, we've talked about that on this podcast before, but gaming's the same way. I think that saving the games in general, because it's really what, Evan, what you're doing is you're saving these from the trash heap and
Mm.
putting them and giving someone a space to go get them. The accessibility to these games is huge. And, at the end of the day, you're the supplier. So we thank you for that for sure. Because
Oh
without it,
my.
without it, my son wouldn't know anything other than turning on a screen and starting to play a game. And he wouldn't, really get, and I know Greg, your boy's the same way, has physical copies of games and is darn good at them. So,
Yep, and
with
he's a big collector himself. I mean,
you know,
I was very proud of him making his own uh, Google Doc to keep track of his own collection, and
Awesome.
yeah,
yep,
yeah.
Man,
So
well,
yeah, he's been steeped in that since the time he was born. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, guys, real quick, boy, do I appreciate those kind words and hearing the two of you talk about your sons and you guys collecting. Like that's literally why we opened the store. So boy, does that mean a lot, and I just super appreciate those kind of words, man. That's so cool, and like, man, it again, that makes me think so many things. Like it is interesting to see, like I kind of mentioned earlier, we can kind of all see the writing on the wall with where games with where new games are going. Listen, like we're probably a generation away from everything being digital or everything being streamed, and it's I'll mention this though. This kind of ties into so much of this conversation. The Switch 2 is about to be released here in the States, and it's a Nintendo console, so it'll sell well. But for all the regulars that are coming into the store, there's probably 50 people that are a weekly or bi-weekly, customer or just a friend that comes in at this point. 80 to 90% of those people that I talk about the Switch 2 with aren't looking forward to it, aren't excited about it, aren't getting it, at least not for a year or two. People are kind of pushing back, at least from a game store owner perspective. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of push back on the direction, meaning a non physical, mostly digital direction that the gaming industry is heading. So that really it just backs up what you guys are saying. Like the the connection that you guys have with your sons and being able to game hunt, and I feel honored to be able to be the store that you guys come to do that. That I am seeing more of a fire burning under, and I'm seeing the direction that the industry is heading. People are just not on board with, and that's not just like a one or two conversation deal. That's like a 40 conversation deal out of 50 total conversations. People are like, yeah, we don't like what's happening and we don't really want to support it. So we want to kind of keep physical media as alive as possible. So fully backs up what you guys are saying from someone that runs a game store. And again, super appreciate those kind words, guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely a two-way street. We really appreciate you being able to provide what you provide. I've seen a lot of we'll call them boutique stores come and go. And I'm not, I frequent toy stores. I frequent, flea markets. Greg does the same thing. And, having the ability to gather such a wide variety of what you have, I think that speaks volumes as well, is because, when I'm digging a flea market bin, and stuff's covered with sticky just goo, and you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm not even gonna dig this anymore. I don't have to worry about going into your shop and not picking up a game and having it stick to my hand. That's
That's awesome.
so it makes it a fun outing too. Like you said, my son, and Greg, I think you're in the same boat. It's almost like it's a weekly thing. Stop in and see
Yes.
what came through. So
That's
that's
awesome.
it makes it that much more fun. So on that note, what are some tips for newcomers to get into retro gaming? So Evan, I'll start with you. What are some tips for people who, yeah, they might be toying around with it. Maybe they had they played games as a youngster, and they just don't do it anymore, but they'd really like to get back into it. So obviously go to main level games, but if they're looking at getting back into it, where do you point them? I guess is the best. How do you help them get started?
That's a great question. And totally not okay. I obviously sure I do want to plug main level games, but I would I I know you were just kind of joking, but I would say don't buy your games from Amazon.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
just for the sake of a price point, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
So I would say number one thing is try to find a local game store, even if it's within like 30 minutes of you, and see if you can strike up a good relationship with the owner. Hopefully, the owner or the employees there are personable and would like to develop relationships with the customers, and hopefully they become friends. Like, try to strike up a conversation with a local game store, because kind of like what y'all just mentioned. Like, if you're looking to get back into gaming or getting into the retro scene, you guys are right. a game store nowadays is really where you're going to find variety. Oh man, it's unfortunate, but yes, Greg, you mentioned kind of gone are the days that like boxes of NES games are just readily available at any garage sale or any family friend.
Mhm.
Those are that is drying up. So it is tough to get into the retro scene. A game store, I firmly believe is um, just the should be a goal of gamers, just because of how hard it is to find games out in the wild. So if you're able to develop a relationship with a game store and you like them, hang out there when it's convenient, and that's a way that you can learn. I I would say this though too. It'd be how do I put this? It'd be wise to find some systems that have some backwards compatibility. If you're like, you know what, I haven't played games since childhood. I played a variety in childhood, and I want to at least have options. Like finding yourself a PS2 or a backwards compatible PS3, even picking up a Wii so that you can have Wii and GameCube availability. Like finding some backwards compatible systems would be huge because that just gives you options to several libraries at that point. And really getting the systems is not the hard part because uh, it's really just tracking down a variety of games, which can be tough. Facebook Marketplace is certainly helpful. Now, what's happened since COVID, and this really happened, I don't know if it's happened in the toy scene, guys, but I know in a lot of collectible scenes, whether it's trading cards, obviously video games, since COVID, Facebook Marketplace has become just overwhelmed with product, with listing, but at the same time, it's become overwhelmed with people that are on there very, very consistently, and are looking for good deals, and rightfully so. I mean, my goodness, that's how I was able to build my collection out, was Facebook Marketplace. So Facebook Marketplace could certainly be a good start to pick up a system. You might get lucky. It's weird, even garage sales. Those guys, I barely find systems at garage sales anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just become a tough gig. Now, I certainly don't want to try to steer the podcast in a very different direction, but has that kind of been the same with the toy scene? Like, are garage sales kind of a tougher deal, and Facebook Marketplace is tough for
Oh yeah.
collecting toys? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
It's
mean,
absolutely parallel.
Oh
it's
man. And
it's people know what they have.
yeah, yeah,
And there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more selling platforms than the original old Bay of E,
yes,
that people can go down. Facebook Marketplace is one.
yeah,
People sell on Whatnot. People list on, Mercari. There's all these things that people can do, to sell it where they don't have to just, throw a couple tables in the garage and open the door.
right.
I think that's made it hard on any kind of collecting aspect of anything. And it just flea market flip killed everything.
Yes, yes, yes. And I feel like for collectibles in general, whether it is toys, cards, games, or what have you, the barrier to entry has risen from a financial standpoint. So that's why I kind of mentioned game stores earlier. Like, yes, you're going to be paying retail, and that's why I also mentioned try to avoid certain online sites because you're going to pay 200% retail. But um, a lot of game stores, what they have is just the availability to purchase. So, because retro games have just increased in price and they haven't dropped. They either stay where they're at or they go up. That's kind of what this market does. So, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, really from COVID, like if you want to enter the retro scene, it's probably going to be it's going to be a lot more expensive than it was 5 years ago. That's just unfortunately the truth. And guys, because of the direction, like we kept talking about with digital, I'm not convinced that physical video games, that retro games are ever going to tank.
Mhm.
I know some collectibles do. Pokemon has gone up and down. The sports card market has gone up and down. I would imagine toys have probably stayed fairly consistent. But games, I really believe, and that's why I took a risk and opened up a store. But really believe that games are going to always have uh, they're going to always be valuable. And I know valuable can be, it can mean different things to different people, but I just think it's always going to be expensive to build a collection now, unfortunately.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get into retro, because what's really cool about the gaming market, and I would imagine the toy market as well, is if you walk into main level games or whatever game store you go into and you spend $20 on the game and you walk out, that game is still worth $20.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that is what's cool about the retro scene, is because it doesn't fluctuate like crazy. Um, Meaning the prices don't fluctuate like crazy or anything. What you purchase, that's what it's worth, and it will probably go up over time. So yes, it is kind of expensive to get into, and tips to getting into retro: save some money to get into it would be probably a good tip. But like I said, that collection that you're going to build out, it's going to remain that price or increase. Historically, that's kind of what we see in the video game market, is the market doesn't drop long term. It might plateau. It might have a 10% adjustment, but it's going to gradually go up over time. And because of that digital side of things that's coming, I just really see that trend continuing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing that I'll add to it is make sure that when you find your spot, they have a good return policy.
Oh
You don't
yeah,
want
for sure.
to have I mean, CD type games you can kind of see right off the bat, but cartridge
Sure.
games you don't know if you're going to find a glitch till you play it. And
That's right.
I know you've been good with folks who purchase from the store. I don't necessarily know if that's consistent across the board. If you're out there
Sure.
listening in I think we have a download in Australia. So
Nice.
if
That's
you're in
awesome.
Australia, which if your name's Joel Bateman and you're just listening because you know who we are, that hopefully you have a store with a good return policy. But
Rob,
okay.
dude, you are so right. So, and I say that because uh, I I get people that come into the store that have gone to stores all over the country, and ones that say, like, no returns, no refunds. They typically just don't go back to that store. So
Right.
like it becomes that much harder to even get your hands on games you're hunting, because you're like, well, I want to buy it, but I don't want to. Especially if we're talking hundreds of dollars, it's like I don't want to potentially buy something that doesn't work. So yes, for main level games, anyone listening, return policy is very, very, very open. I try to make things right as often as I can. I've turned down, I don't know if this is wise to say or not, but I'll say it anyway. In the last year and a half, I've only turned down one item, and I haven't returned it because the person purchased it like 10 months prior. So I was like, this is kind of outside of the window at this point.
You didn't, it's not a
Yeah.
game rental store.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it's
right.
more
Yeah,
of a
right,
store.
right, right.
So,
Right.
all right. So Greg, I have one for you, and I kind of tailored this question to you because of your child. Okay, so
Hmm.
he's he's not young anymore, so you've kind of
Hmm.
been able to see the differences between your gaming childhood and his gaming childhood. So can you maybe describe the gaming scene of the 80s and 90s compared to the gaming scene today through the eyes of maybe you and your son?
Good question.
Oh yes. Well, nowadays, if you want to learn more about a game, you just hop on the internet, get onto YouTube or any website that has an FAQ, and you can learn all about the game and get a good feel for it, and kind of know what you're doing without too much trial and error. But back in my day, we had magazines and 1-900 hint hotline numbers, and there was a TV show named Video Power that had video game hints on it, and we kind of had to rely on that stuff before the internet. Yeah, Nintendo Power Magazine was a biggie. I mean, I still lean on some dog-eared copies of that for some games when I get the urge to play them, like the venerable Super Mario Brothers 3 guide, which has served multiple generations of our family, and glad to still have that. To get all those matching games right, to get all the items you can.
Mm-hmm.
That was an essential guide, and I think that may have been part of the marketing strategy, making it to where you kind of had to pony up a few more bucks for the strategy guide if you really wanted to succeed at this game.
Right.
And but that's perhaps another discussion. The business model of Nintendo in late '80s, which there are stories to be told about that, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
And but one that kind of flew in the face of Nintendo's policies and was highly successful and a game changer was the Game Genie, which I may have mentioned,
Hmm.
which came out from Galoob and really leveled the playing field on a lot of those games. And I'm glad to be able to share that. I'm glad to be able to share that with my son, and I still fire it up myself from time to time. But as far as back to the old scene to the current scene, I'd say maybe the biggest change is back in the day you had to see people in person to play against them, and
Huh.
you couldn't really
True.
game online
Wow.
because there was minimal internet connectivity back then. But
Right.
that's both good and bad, I think. I mean, the communal experience of going into this big dark room full of noisy arcade games with all the flashing lights and such, and having to wait in line to play the new hotness and feed at your quarters.
Yeah.
That was something pretty special. But at the same time, you can just, I mean, it's hard to beat being able to pick something up and just hop on and play whatever you want against someone halfway across the world on the modern consoles. But it was also bad when I embarrassed myself in front of strangers at times. When I would, if I botched something playing a game, I remember playing a particularly terrible fighting game called Time Killers in the arcade, and it was trying to out Mortal Kombat basically, and
Yeah.
I remember losing a match instantly and being pretty much laughed out of the arcade
Oh no.
because my character got beheaded with one fell swoop as soon as the fight started, which I'm pretty sure was a glitch, but the game was rushed out so fast. I'm sure they didn't worry about that too much, and
Was
I
that a
still
little?
play that game
Was that
every now and
at
again.
Aladdin's castle, Greg? Was that Aladdin's castle?
This was the Americade at the Butler Mall, which I believe is
Americade.
even bigger.
It was bigger, and
Hmm.
at the end of its time, it was huge.
Yeah, yeah, that
Wow.
was it was quite the massive destination. Yeah.
Pool hall and all of it. I remember that place. So
Hmm.
Real quick, guys. Hearing the old school days of the arcades in the Butler area, like talking to you guys about it, a couple of the guys at the game store tell me about it. It sounds like it was just the place to be. Like whether it was Aladdin's Castle or the arcade at the old Butler Mall. Like is that right? Like on a Friday night, Saturday, whatever. Like those arcades were just jam packed, the place to be, huh?
uh, I wouldn't. I'm trying to think. I mean, the Butler Mall. When I got my license at the Butler Mall, and it wasn't but maybe a year or two after that when they basically, tore it down and started doing what they were doing
Gotcha.
today. But that
Hmm.
I don't even remember if it was still Americade at the end. I mean, it always will be to me because even if I can't recall the name, but it was half arcade, half pool hall. They had like multiple pool tables. So yeah, it was like a hangout, but just like any other spot like that back then, you abuse it, you lose it type of thing. So I
Mm,
remember the owner got, I mean, I'm rightfully so. He probably got tired of refelting pool tables and fixing consoles and things like that because it was
sure.
just, getting abused. But that kind of between that and Skate Castle, man, that was the places.
Skate Castle. Oh my.
So I didn't hang out too much. Aladdin's Castle, Greg, was at the Clearview Mall, right? That was the one in the
Yep.
corner that's now the mall offices in its last iteration. And
It moved at one point. It used to be kind of where the pizza place was back that way,
oh
and then
yeah,
it moved over to there. Yeah.
Mm,
yeah. My the Butler Mall, not that I did it very often, but was bicycle distance from
Nice.
me. So, but that was the jam. The Quirky Mall was 422 would have been a wild ride on a bicycle when you're
Eek.
12.
Yeah. Yeah. Would
So
not recommend.
yeah, but no, I'm spot on with you there, Greg, about the multiplayer. Even now, cross-platform. Like I can remember multiplayer at first, like some of the Call of Duties when within the last 10 years or so, it was like you bought PlayStation, you played with PlayStation Network users. That was it. Like if your buddy had an Xbox or the person that you know, hey, I'm gonna pick it up too. I have an Xbox. Well, okay, good luck. Have fun because I can't play with you. But now, that's even becoming a thing of the past. And you know, for my son to go into the store on Saturday and say, "Hey, is this a multiplayer game?" That's what it was like. It was like, okay, do we have two controllers? Because this is a multiplayer game. Like Sega Genesis Mortal Kombat, like that was fun when you had two people. It wasn't fun, not that it wasn't fun, but it wasn't as fun when you were, playing the game. It was fun when you were playing your buddy,
Mm.
because you had those bragging rights to go about it. And, that's like a given with today's gamers is they don't have to worry about whether it's multiplayer. It is multiplayer. There's probably a massive online multiplayer section. I mean, Fortnite is basically built on that, and
Mm.
it's incredibly huge. So yeah, that's a big one for sure. Um, okay, so one final question, and we're going to go round robin on this one for certain is what are some of the rarest items that you've come across? So I'm going to go first on this one, and I'm going to exclude anything that I've bought at your store, uh,
Deal.
because some of the rare stuff that I've got, you might talk about as being some of the stuff that you saw come through. But the rarest thing at the time, it probably wasn't rare, but it has slowly but surely gained rarity over the past 5 or 6 years. Is the Godzilla the game from 2014, the PlayStation 2 game.
Oh yeah.
It was an Atari developer game, and I bought it because I'm a Godzilla fan. So I bought it back then. Gameplay, it's kind of repetitive, but there's lots of unlockable characters in it. But it's got some pretty good graphics, and I didn't even realize it until I picked it up used at one of the remaining retail gaming stores for $4.99. So I saw it somewhere. I think it was at a toy show, and I guess they're going for like $200 to $300 now. So it's on the shelf in my son's room because he has played it and unlocked more characters than I have. But I guess that's probably, maybe even though it wasn't at the time the rarest thing, it definitely my rarest item in my collection that it's not obtained from main level games. Let's put it that way. So that's how I'm answering that question. So, Greg, I know you'll probably have something that'll trump that, but I pose the challenge to you to not use a main level games purchase.
Well, yes, this one it was another one I found for significantly less than its market value. It's probably been 20, 25 years ago now that I found this thing at a oh yeah, probably 20 years ago, I'd say, at a comic book store that happened to have a pile of Atari 2600 games that it took in a collection. And one of them really caught my eye because I had never seen it before, and I've only seen it a handful of times since. But I'm glad to have it in my collection now, and that is Halloween for the Atari 2600.
No way,
Yeah,
dude.
I figured that's where
Sorry,
you were
that's
going.
awesome.
I figured that was where he was going because that one is one that's hard to beat.
Wow,
uh,
Greg, that's very expensive now.
yeah,
That's awesome.
it's an enjoyable game, and it's
Nice.
yeah, that was going to be my next question, Greg. Is given that it's Atari 2600, how true is it to the franchise? Is it Friday the 13th NES true, or is it kind of worse than that, like ET true?
Um, I'd say, well, I'll say it's more graphic than the film
Really?
because, yeah, you're playing this babysitter. She's not referred to as Laurie Strode, but you can assume. And you're walking around through this. There's an upper and a lower level of this house, and you're trying to grab the child you're babysitting and protect him from Michael Myers and take him to the safe room at the end of the house. And uh, and then Michael will pop onto the screen, and the theme for the music will play in Atari chiptune style, like beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, beep. And he'll come at you with this little knife, and if he touches Lori, then her head disappears, and she runs around like a chicken with its head cut off,
Oh
and
no!
with little pixelated, maybe some of the first pixelated blood in video game history,
Wow.
coming out of her neck, and um, so I guess that was a first, and it's probably part of why the game is so rare,
Yeah.
because it was pretty hard to get. I think there was a bit of a controversy over the content, and retailers didn't want to stock it, and of course now fans of the franchise all will gobble up anything that was licensed from the game from that film, and I'm being one of those fans as well as a video game fan, so I was especially delighted to find that, and yeah, it's really it's a fun little game for what it is, and you can get a weapon to fight back against Michael, and if you jab him with it when he gets near you, he runs away, and when you finally run out of lives, the music from the film plays again, and the camera sort of shifts from room to room. It's almost like the ending of the film, so
Wow.
it's more faithful than a lot of game adaptations that we got back in the day. I'll say, especially for Atari 2600.
Nice.
I give it a thumbs up.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So to the game store owner, we're going to have to. I'm gonna ask you this in
Yeah,
two different ways. So the
I
rarest
already know.
thing
Yep.
you own and the rarest thing that you don't own but maybe have had in the store that maybe left or is still there. So
Okay.
two
Okay.
different things.
Okay. So let's see. How can I even answer this? So okay. So the it'd probably be easy to answer it this way. Would it be okay if I answered games that I found before I ever opened the store, even dreamed about opening a store? My rarest find then, and then yes, my rarest find that's come into the store. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go with
Okay,
that. Yep.
perfect. Okay. So pretty early into my game collecting. So I obviously grew up as a gamer. Didn't really start the collection side of the hobby until about 2018. What was when I got serious about it. So started doing Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. At the time, there was an app called OfferUp.
Hmm.
Um, it's oh no, I'm sorry. I was using an app called Let Go, which has been purchased by OfferUp. But was on those apps, just trying to hunt down games. Found a gentleman on Craigslist was selling a box of NES games. Not a great photo. Drove down to Pittsburgh, and he had a list of the games on there. So I did my homework beforehand, and you know paid him. Just kind of did like a count of the games as opposed to going through the games. Made sure that the number was there. So paid him, and then didn't look through them until I got home. And in the bottom of the box, which was not on the list, I must have miscounted when I was there, was a copy of DuckTales 2,
Mm,
which was awesome. So that's obviously a fairly rare game for sure. So that's definitely the rarest, outside of the game store find that has ever happened to me. And that was a surprise too. That was very much like a really cool, like, didn't even know it was there,
mm.
and wow, look down and find it. And it was through the Craigslist email, so I didn't know the man's
Right.
information.
Right.
So
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
I guess I own this now.
Yeah.
So yes, that's definitely a pre-game store. So the rarest game that's walked through the game store is a game for the Super Nintendo called Hagane. It was a pretty late release in the Super Nintendo's life cycle. A lot of people, I've never been able to get a sure answer on this. A lot of people said it was mostly a rental store title. But I've seen boxes out there. Most rental stores, they would label their boxes like crazy, whether it was Hollywood Video or Blockbuster. So I'm not sure if this was a specifically a rental store game, but it fetches right around $1,100. It's grown in price immensely, even in the past 6 months. But the gentleman that traded it in, um, these were his games from childhood. This is gonna be a great story. I don't know if this guy will ever listen to this, but boy, will this be a great story. So he brought in his childhood collection. He's probably in his 40s or 50s, and probably 200 Super Nintendo games. Just an incredible collection. Hagane was certainly the best one. So we go through everything. We agree on a price. I pay him. As I'm paying him, I ask him, "Hey, by the way, I forgot to ask it. Did you ever have the boxes and the manuals for these?" And he goes, he goes, "Oh, you're gonna hate me. I actually just burned those recently."
Oh, uh,
so, so the reason why he was even giving up his childhood games was he was going through a move. And I thought it was interesting. All these games were in brand new, like totes. The yellow top, black bottom totes you'd see at Sam's Club or Walmart.
mhm.
Like, wow, because in my head as I was going through, I was like, this is like a brand new tote. There's all these, really old games in there. And so yeah, then whenever I asked him, he's like, oh yeah, those were like because he had consolidated to help the move. He's like, they were taking up too much room. I burned them.
Mm.
And so then my heart, and so I was like, so you had the boxes for all these? Like, oh yeah. So my heart sank, and I didn't have the heart to tell him. Well, I probably would have been another five grand I could have offered you, but
Yeah.
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 Man.
Oh
Oh
my
my.
goodness. But guys, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. Probably once a week, I'll have new customers in the store that will walk around again. They'll be like, "Oh my goodness!" They're kind of reliving, getting flashbacks of playing these games in childhood. About once a week, guys, I'll hear this. I'll hear, "We used to have a lot of this, but my parents threw it out,"
Mhm.
or, "Man, we used to have a lot of this, but when I moved out, my parents just donated it, Goodwill, or sold it for a buck a game or something." Like that happens all the time. It's interesting. So
Yep.
it's yeah. But what's more interesting? I have a slight prediction. Again, I know we're coming to a close here. I think within the next decade, we're going to see an incredible amount of massive game collections hit the market because as the baby boomer generation begins to pass away, some of their children's, childhood game collections are still up in the attic. Those are going to all of a sudden be brought to market because, the baby boomers are going to pass away and
Mhm.
then the collections are going to go somewhere. So
Yep.
I think whether it's toys, old, vintage games, I really think we're going to start to see some cool collections become available to the masses here.
Absolutely.
Hmm. You may be
Absolutely. And
right. Yeah.
yeah, that is a cringe phrase that we hear in the toy world as well. Yeah, I used to have this one. I used to have the GI Joe aircraft carrier. Congratulations, because that thing's a pain in the butt to try to sell.
Yeah.
So, but all right. So awesome stuff. Really appreciate it. Evan, thanks for joining us and,
Of course.
spending the time to walk down this trail, talk about gaming and what it means to you. And, like I said, I can't, I can't thank you enough for, being so welcoming to the community, having the store, being able, I see people who just come in, they might just talk to you for a little while, get the juice, and then come back later on and buy. And I think that that's important too, is because people don't realize having the store is like in our area. I don't think people realize how unique of an opportunity that is.
Wow.
They'll be like, hey, there's this cool store. And they go to a different area and tell that person, they'll be like, we don't have anything like that. And then those people make the drive. So,
Sure.
it's fantastic. And I know that both my family and Greg's family, it's in the weekly rotation to come in and see what you got. So, really appreciate it. And Greg, I know any last thoughts or comments for our audience, or Evan?
Well, I would echo kind of what we said before and say hats off to Evan for really helping to spread the joy of nostalgia. I know we had a little conversation about that the other day about it's all about recapturing the feelings we had when we first played certain games, and
Mm.
that's a big part of what it's all about with our KRG toy show as well. And yeah, main level games is a tremendous regular source of that joy, and I'm just delighted to see you doing so well.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Awesome.
So Evan, this is the opportunity for the plug, for the details. Let the folks know where you're located. Maybe the at least the hours right now. If you're listening to this in a time capsule, check your interwebs. But right now, where can folks find you and when?
Sure thing. So again, we are Main Level Games. We're located at 221 South Main Street here in Butler, PA. So we're open Tuesday through Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 to 5, Friday, Saturday, 11 to 7. If you're listening and you want to join in the fun and follow along, we're on Facebook and Instagram at Main Level Games. So we're green text, black background logo. You'll see us there, and yeah, man, we're just super appreciate it, guys. Rob and Greg, you guys are the best parts of the Main Level Games community, and really appreciate you guys and your families coming in. And I mean, this podcast is awesome too. I'm a regular listener at this point, which is sweet. And man, just really enjoy talking to you guys. We'll have to do this again sometime
Oh yeah.
soon, too,
Absolutely.
because man, talking games with you guys is this is the best part of my week. So really appreciate you guys.
Next time we're gonna do not retro. We're just gonna delve right into the new gen stuff.
Nice.
Really make people's noses bleed.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So, all right, and hey, if you have Pokemon, I know Evan had a large
Yeah.
event where he, was able to provide Pokemon cards to kids in the area because I think everybody knows who listens to this type of thing. It's hard to get Pokemon cards, especially if you're just a young person who wants to delve into it. So you did that great event, and now you have Pokemon cards available for sale at the store. Some pretty nice ones.
Yes, yeah, dude. Thanks. I forgot we even did that. So yeah, so we're currently offering vintage cards. So Wizards of the Coast, so the first 4 years of publishing, we sell those at the store. If you're local to Butler, the Western PA area, and you have kiddos, bring them on down. I have thousands of cards that I've made decks with that we're giving away to kids for free. We're just going to kind of consistently have that as an option. Like you said, Rob, it's tough to get cards, so we want to help kids get into the hobby for as little cost as possible. So why not make it free? So yes, we have free cards for you for your kids. So come on down. We'd love to hand them out.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, Greg, we're slowly approaching what I would call the busy season. So
Yep.
we have just about every kind of event and podcast subject material type of activity coming up over the next couple months, probably including. I wouldn't even say ending with the KRG Toy Show in July, but including that. So more than likely, we'll have a lot to chat about. I think a couple of really good events. We might have already attended some, to be honest with you, and we just haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about it. Now that I think about that, so lots to talk about, right, Greg? Anything you're looking forward to in the very near future?
Absolutely. Well, I can think of several things. I know Toy Hio's coming up, Monster Bash is coming up, and yeah, we've got our own
Yeah,
our
our own
own
little one.
KRG toy show, and there's going to be so many things that come up
Yeah,
before and after that. Yeah, it's definitely the happening time of year for events.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, yeah, stay tuned Monster Bash, Ohio, KRG Toy Show. There's probably another Steel City Con in there. There's just all kinds of events in and around the area, to partake in. If you want to hear a little bit about those, you can go back through our backlog. We probably have a podcast on one or two of them already where you can get the details. But Greg, any closing thoughts for our listening audience?
Not really, but just hey, if you want to get into games, yeah, places like main level are a great way to do it. Just yeah, collect what you like is the
Mm-hmm.
best way to start.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right. So thanks everybody for listening, and please head over to all your podcast apps and subscribe so you don't miss an occasional episode about this sort of stuff. Give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We're all over your social media dial. You can check out our other ventures by clicking on the links within those social media channels. If you have any interest in being a guest or submitting a question, you can email us at yinsdown@gmail.com. And as always, may Godzilla destroy your home last.